Hello everyone and welcome to round 1 of the FTX Crypto Cup, where 16 of the strongest players in the world will be competing for the $2,000 and $20,000 worth of prize money, plus also a $100,000 worth in Bitcoin. And these are the preliminaries. So we're going to see who's going to go into the upper parts of the competition. This is a game I decided to show from round 1, Mamedyarov versus Magnus Carlsen. It's really a wild one. I was really looking forward to Nepo playing against Dubov, but yeah, unfortunately that game was kind of a snooze fest, so I decided to go with this one. So without further ado, let's check it out, and we're going to discuss a little bit about the tournament as we cover the games. So Mamedyarov with the white pieces opens with knight to f3. He goes for the Reti. Opening, we have d5, g3, and c6. We have bishop to g2, and now bishop to g4. Black wants to develop this light square bishop very early on, so he no longer has any issues in developing the light square bishop, which can often be a nuisance in openings such as this. So d3, we have knight to d7, and now knight b to d2. We have e6. Now that the light square bishop has been developed, we can put all of our pawns here on light squares. We have e4 attacking in the center, and bishop to d6 by Magnus. And here there are some games where castles was played. Also c4 is a known move, but here Mamedyarov plays h3, and it is now already, as of move 7, that we have a completely new game. So let's see what Magnus does. He retreats with bishop to h5. We have castles, and now knight to e7. We have d4, grabbing more space in the center. e5 might be an idea in the future. We have castles, and now rook to e1. We have b5 by Magnus, and now a4, attacking this b5 pawn. We have b4, advancing, and now c4. So Magnus will capture here en passant, so captures, and now rook to b8, getting the rook to the only open file on the board, and now e5. Closing up the center, we have bishop to c7, and now bishop to a3. Now white will probably also grab the b file for his rooks. We have c5 here, trying to ruin white's pawn structure. If you capture here, then you've ruined your beautiful pawn chain in the center of the board. So knight to b3, adding a third attacker to the c5 pawn, and basically inviting Magnus to advance the pawn all the way to c4, which Magnus does. We have knight to c5 now, and captures, and now bishop to a5, going after this c3 pawn. So Mamedyarov has to defend it. We have rook, queen to c1. Now the rook will also be able to defend it with rook to e3 if needed. Queen to d7, connecting rooks, and now knight to h4. We have rook f to e8, and now the knight can finally move, but we want to get the knight over to f5, but that is something that white will try to prevent. So here first we have f4, rook to b3 by Magnus, now with a double attack on the c3 pawn, and Mamedyarov defends it, just rook to e3. We have bishop to g6, now not allowing any rook to b1, as the bishop now, not that arrow, the bishop now nicely covers the b1 square, so Mamedyarov just eliminates it. We have captures, and now g4, not allowing this knight to come to f5. We have rook e to b8 by Magnus, and now queen to e1. So Mamedyarov in a tough spot a little bit here. Magnus doesn't really have a straightforward way to break through the position, but it's very, very hard to find good moves for white here. So here we have rook to b2, Magnus grabbing more space here. And now comes queen to h4. Pretty adventurous move, but if there's nothing better, you might as well try it. And here the knight is under attack, so Magnus should do something about this. He can either defend it with something like rook to b7 or bishop to d8, which is what happened in the game. We have queen back to e1. Mamedyarov abandons his plan, and now knight to c6. We have king to h1. Later on, you can maybe play some like f5, open up the g file, get the queen maybe into the game, get the other rook over to g1, attack the black king, and so on. So here, bishop to e7, offering a trade of bishops, and here we have captures, and now queen to g3 as planned. Mamedyarov's basically only counterplay here is to somehow execute f5 successfully here. So here, rook to b1 check by Magnus. He trades a pair of rooks. We have captures, and now king to h2. And now queen to a3, just nicely infiltrating with the queen, saying that you don't really have anything on the king's side. And, well, Mamedyarov has to disagree. He plays f5. He wants to, of course, open up lines of attack, and now queen to c1. Magnus just threatening straight out checkmate here with queen to g1. So h4, creating a square on h3 for the king. Now delivering this check doesn't really do anything. The king can very safely go to h3. So g captures on f5 instead. We have g captures and now knight to e7, attacking the f5 square, but also just going for this fork as the queen and the rook are here. And so here we have f captures on e5, and now while Magnus should capture on e6, he decides to go for knight to f5 now with this very nice fork, and it seems like you're winning the game, but there is one move that white can make here to not lose the game, so I'm sure you see it even without pausing the video. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting it immediately. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is, of course, e7. A wonderful Zwischenzug here, saying that if you capture my queen now with, for example, knight captures here on g3, I'm just going to bring a queen into the game. And then after your king moves, I'm going to pick up this knight here, and then I'm just up a bishop, and you don't really have anything here. You can give one check, but after I move, that's pretty much it. There are no more useful moves here for black. So instead, after this e7 move, we have rook back to b8 by Magnus, now guarding the queening square, but this now also means that the rook is no longer guarding the queen, and there are no threats along the back rank. So here, just rook to e1, now saying, okay, you win my queen, I'm going to win your queen. So here, queen to d2 by Magnus, and now rook to b1. Just offering that rook for free, well, kind of for free, because if you capture it, it's just a nice queen to e8 check, and then you're just lost because white has two queens. So instead, after rook to b1, Magnus goes to rook to e8, and now queen to g5. Now Mamedyarov is the one who offers a queen trade, and Magnus declines with knight to e3, and he's in a very tight spot here. Magnus does have some sort of an attack, but not really, because this pawn survived, and this is now a monster pawn. So here we have king to h1, and this is where Mamedyarov could have maybe played rook to g1, but it's very, very unclear as to what is happening here. Okay, now you're threatening to move the bishop and deliver some checkmate, but after something like g6, it will not be easy for white to find the move. Probably king h1, then you can move the bishop, maybe try and break through here. So this is one way to go about it. Mamedyarov went for king to h1 first, but now Magnus plays queen captures on c3. We have e6 now, very fierce attack, and now queen captures on d4. The problem is if Magnus captures this, just queen h5, and that's it. The rook is under attack. If you move it, we bring another queen into the game. So you have to capture it, and now rook to b8 check. This would be just game over. Rook would have to block, and rook captures on e8 is checkmate. So instead, after e6, Magnus decided to play queen captures on d4, but this doesn't help him. This is just a much better position for Mamedyarov. We have e captures on f7 with check, king captures, and now comes the moment where you have to really play well, and there is basically only one good move for white here, and that is h5. But Mamedyarov did not play this. After this h5 move, well, if it was played, then the problem is you cannot capture this pawn, and that's a really big difference as to what happened in the game. Now, if you capture it, we just deliver check, the king moves, and we're gonna deliver checkmate. Rook b8 check, rook has to block, and now the queen guards the rook, and this is checkmate. But instead, bishop to f3 was played. Bishop to f3 was a very strong a move ago. Now it's really bad, but you know, just because you give up the e7 pawn, there's no reason to give up the e7 pawn. So Magnus grabbed this pawn, and now comes bishop to h5 with check. So it's similar, but the black king can escape now. King to e6, queen g6 check, queen to f6 now. Now Magnus, of course, will be offering a queen trade, because if the queens get traded off, then the two connected pass pawns are just winning. So here, queen g3, but now queen to e5. Again, offering a queen trade, defending his knight. We have queen g6 check. Mamedyarov checking if maybe Magnus is up for a repetition, but king to d7. Not worrying about something like rook to b7 check. We can just play king to d8, and then if whatever white plays doesn't really matter. There are no checks. The queen covers b8. If you trade, black happily accepts this, and there's not much you can do to continue this. So instead, after king to d7 with bishop to f3, but now comes just queen to e6, and white's position is very, very hard to play. We have queen g3, and now comes queen to d6. Again, Magnus just shamelessly offers a queen trade, queen to g5, and now king to c7, taking away any weird checks along the 7th rank. We have rook to e1, now with a double attack on the knight, but just queen e5 yet again. We have queen to g6, and here Magnus just played queen to f4, and it was in this position that Shakhriyar Mamedyarov resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. You either lose this bishop here with check, or you save the bishop and then you lose the pawn with check, and then after the king moves you will also lose the rook. So there is absolutely nothing you can play here, and for that reason Mamedyarov resigned, and Magnus wins his game against Shakhriyar in round 1 of the FTX Crypto Cup, which has just started. So we're going to see what happens next. There are so many games in the preliminaries. Like I said, 16 players every round, so do use hashtag suggestion for me to spot some games. Next game is probably Nepo versus Carlsen, if it's not going to be a terrible snooze fest. I imagine it's not going to be, so probably the next game we are covering. So yeah, that's the game. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Tough luck for Mamedyarov. He really had Magnus on the run, but Magnus is very, very slippery. Something that Boris Spassky often said of Bobby Fischer when they played their World Chess Championship match, that he was like a little squid or maybe a fish. But yeah, I would like to thank Samit Amin, Ryan Urban, Akram the Pilot, William Rideout, and Emilio Carraro for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of this wonderful event, checking up on your suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.